Welcome, everyone. My name is Frida, and I represent the Work That Reconnects network. Thank you for joining us for the Webinars and Conversation Cafe series, where we're offering a wide range of rich educational and supportive opportunities for our global community of Work That Reconnects facilitators, members, and friends of the network. Our intention here is to strengthen the web of the Work That Reconnects community while continually reaching our current edges to weave deeper connections with others who are also contributing to the great turning in diverse and complementary ways. delAmor has been studying and facilitating the Work That Reconnects since 2013 with the focus on dismantling oppression, transforming our cultural paradigm, and supporting parents through these unprecedented and challenging times. Jo is the author of the forthcoming book, Raising Children in the Midst of Global Crisis, a compassionate guidebook for parenting in turbulent times. Welcome, Jo.
Thank you. Thank you. So as we move into our time here together and get ready to do this work that we're going to do together, I want to start by grounding and presencing ourselves. And then I'll give some idea about how we're going to move through the time together. But before we even get there, I want to just ground and presence and get settled in. And I want to begin our time with a dedicated moment of silence in recognition of George Floyd's life, along with all of the other innocent Black Americans who have been killed by cops and the millions of people who are putting their lives on the line to fight for racial justice here in the United States and around the world. So we're just going to have a moment of presence and silence. Okay, and from this space of presence, we're going to start to settle into our bodies and take a moment to connect with the land that we live with. So I invite you to really just let your body get into a nice, comfortable, relaxed position and to follow your breath. Start to notice and pay attention to your breath as it moves in and out of your body. In your next exhale, see if you can let your consciousness sink down deep into your heart, your solar plexus, into your belly, down through your pelvis, and right into the ground beneath you. With each exhale, sinking more deeply, growing roots down into the ground, into the earth, and feeling from that place into the land that surrounds you. This ecosystem, this little part of planet Earth that you're familiar with. Bring your awareness to the plants and the trees, the animals, birds, the weather patterns, the temperature, the movement of wind and moisture that you're familiar with in this particular place on planet Earth. Bring your awareness to all of these other than human beings that make up your land community. And then I invite you to bring your awareness to the traditional human stewards of the land that you live on. If you know the names of the people who lived in the area that you are now for thousands of years as vital parts of this ecosystem, reciprocating their life and stewarding the land in connection with this ecosystem, then please bring those names into your heart, into your mind at this point, and honor them with a deep bow, recognizing that ongoing relationship that this land has had with human beings for countless generations. Notice how the land feeds us, has always fed us, has always cared for us, and that now in our lives, we're taken care of by the land around us, like her children. If our ancestors didn't live for thousands of years on this particular piece of land, we might even consider ourselves an orphan, taken in nonetheless. She feeds us, she shelters us, holds us, renews us. Feel yourself for a moment as truly being part of this land, as you're made through each and every breath you receive, as the water from this land and the food from this land nourishes you, and as her beauty inspires you. I invite you to hone in on one particular aspect of your unique natural environment that you feel most connected to or nurtured by. Something about this place that you live in that really just lifts you up. And as we come out of this meditation, carry that with you, because we're going to share that in our check-in. So you can begin to follow your breath and up and out and back into our collective space here in our Zoom room. We're going to take a moment to get to know each other a little bit with a physical check-in of this aspect of our natural environment that lights us up. So I invite you to share your name, the age of your child or children, and then let us know what that aspect of your natural environment is that lights you up, with the name of it and an expression of movement, a movement expression of that element. So I'll give an example of how we're going to do this. My name is Joe. My daughter is 17 and my stepson is 19. And the clouds hovering over the tops of the mountains while the sun was rising this morning was amazing. They were clinging right there. And if everybody, actually, this is the fun part too, if everybody can kind of copy me, then we're all there together. Okay. Now, I will call, and then you can call on the next person. So I'm going to call on Monica to share, to introduce yourself in that way.
Thank you. I'm Monica. I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister in Salt Lake City, Utah. My daughter is Hannah, and she's 13 years old. And we're transplants to Utah. So the part that we like the best out here is the trees, especially the evergreen trees up in the mountains that just shoot straight up in the air like an arrow.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now you can call on somebody else.
I'll call on Leslie.
I am Leslie. I am also a Unitarian Universalist minister. I don't serve a congregation. I'm a community minister. My son is 11, and in this moment we're traveling, and we're in Ashland, Oregon, where we used to live. But I was picturing Portland, where I do live, and like Monica, there are these trees that I look at from my backyard, and they are similar. They're super straight, but they're also just like, they're so upward focused. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Call on Allison.
Hello, I'm Allison, and my son is 29, and I live in southern Colorado. And the vitality of the wind. Very strong, and I love it. It washes away, washes my mind and washes away all the troubles.
Excellent. So Frida, can you share too?
Yeah, my name is Frida. My son is 11, and we live in Grass Valley, California, near the Yuba River. And we just went down to the Yuba the other morning, and she just flows through the land, across the land, navigating boulders and trees and carving canyons and flowing to the ocean.
Beautiful. Wonderful. So I love just to feel all of the different places and the movements of all of these different elements together. I'm going to take a moment to introduce myself and to introduce the work that we're going to do together, and to kind of give us a sense of what this session is going to be like. So my name is delAmor, as you know. I'm a mom and have been caring for children for over 20 years in various capacities. I've been a nanny, a live-in nanny, a live-out nanny, a temp nanny for over 70 different households in the last 3 years, actually, when I was living in Portland, Oregon. I've done camp counseling in the woods and after school programs and church groups and all sorts of different avenues of working with kids and their families over these last 20 years. And for the last 17 years, I've been an active mom during that. So I've also been studying, I also was actually a personal coach for several years, and I worked with many moms. A lot of my clients were moms, and I was helping them work with relational things with their children or health things or working through challenges in the family. So I've been focused around parenting and child rearing and education in a lot of different avenues and angles. And then over the course of the last about 7 years, I've been studying and working with the Work That Reconnects. Throughout this whole time, I've been very attuned to the particular times that we're living in and the particular challenges and opportunities that this time presents. And so in these last few years, especially as I was nannying in Portland and really working with the Work That Reconnects, I started to really hone in on what I feel is necessary for raising children at this critical time, and skills for actually raising children to be seeds for a new paradigm, and imbuing in them the skills and the qualities and the confidence and the awareness to create something very different for the story of human beings on planet Earth for the future. So that is the motivation and inspiration for the book that I am working on right now. I'm in the editing process and hopefully we'll be able to publish soon. But that's raising children in the midst of global crisis, and really goes into depths about all of these observations and pieces that I've been working on. So I'm going to take a moment to introduce this to Reconnects because I know some of us are a little bit new to that. This is a body of work that is built on and based on philosophies and practices to help us face this mess we're living in without going crazy. That's the tagline, the subtitle for Joanna Macy and Chris Johnstone's book, Act of Hope. And I feel like that just really sums it up. It's help us face this mess without going crazy. What are the skills and the tools and the technologies that we need to stay grounded and sane in the midst of this very radical transformational time. So Joanna Macy is the root teacher of the Work That Reconnects. She and colleagues of hers have been developing this for, I think, nearly 50 years, 40 plus anyways. And it was birthed out of the anti-nuclear activism movements, and began as despair work, and then moved into deep ecology, and all of these different works kind of wrapped into a more comprehensive set of practices and philosophies that is now called the Work That Reconnects. So we're going to work with that today by moving around the spiral of the Work That Reconnects, and that's kind of the infrastructure, or the bones of this work. And what it is a movement from gratitude to honoring our pain for the world, to seeing with new eyes, to growing forth. And so we begin with gratitude to resource ourselves, to stabilize ourselves, to give ourselves a deep root and strength to do the work. And then we turn towards actually facing our pain, our grief for the world, because it was identified by Joanna and her colleagues how important it is to really be present and to feel, to grieve, to allow the reality of our experience to move through us in a very visceral way. When we do that, often it opens new channels. And so that's how we move into the next part of seeing with new eyes. We're able to see our situation in a different way. Things get kind of cleared out, almost like Allison said, with the wind that moves through and clears her mind. It's like as we really let that movement happen, then we are able to move forward in a different way. We're able to see things in a different way. And then it finishes with going forth. And that is so that we're not just talking about things. We're not just doing this process here, but we're taking this process into our lives. And this work was deeply rooted in activism. So this is very important that we make that connection between doing the work and changing the way that we move forward in our lives. So that's a super brief overview of the Work That Reconnects, and it is a vast body, so there's a lot more to it than that. But today we have a short period of time on our Zoom session, so we're going to move into what is relevant for us right now, which is in this webinar, Parenting Within the Pandemic. So this fits right into raising children in the midst of global crisis. Whether that we were in a pandemic or not, we were in a situation. And parenting at this time is its own unique challenge. And so as the pandemic came on, it heightens that challenge for many people. For some people, it hasn't changed their lives too much because maybe they were living in a way that wasn't affected too much. For other people, it radically changed their lives and really caused an outrageous amount of disruption. But I notice as I'm talking with parents and as I'm observing that there is a particular impact, a particular stress, particular challenges and fears, and there's also particular joys and surprise blessing and opportunities that are unique to the parenting experience. And so we're going to be really honing in on that and focusing with that aspect of our lives today. And of course, all of us are parents and many other things. So for the sake of this conversation, we're going to try to keep the conversation in the direction of how is it for us as parents? How is it for us in our relationship with our kids? So we will have plenty of time to talk about what's hard and challenging and the grief and the stress and the challenge around all of this when we move into honoring our pain, but we're going to start with gratitude. So I invite you to put all that stuff on the shelf for a minute and just come into that place of gratitude. And we're going to take a moment to do open sentences, which is one of the practices that is developed in the Work That Reconnects, where you just finish a sentence. So instead of answering a question, you're saying the beginning of the sentence and then you just keep talking and it just comes out how you're feeling. Frida, are we going to break into groups for that? Did you set that up?
I have.
Okay. So even though we're a small group, it's nice to do this in pairs. So we're going to just break out for a second to do in pairs, and then we'll come back and share with each other. It's important to, I want to just go over kind of how we do this in the Work That Reconnects culture. It is very important to be grounded in active listening for this practice. So we invite you to listen deeply to the person that is sharing. And with no comments or crosstalk or any kind of like input while they're sharing. You're just listening, listening deeply. And when it's your turn to share, share openly, share authentically, know that you're being received. I invite you to really hold compassion for yourselves and each other as you're doing this work. And we're just gonna, it's gonna be fairly brief here. We're just gonna spend 1 minute each finishing this sentence. And Frida, can you put the sentence in the chat so everybody can see? There we go. So the sentence is, some surprising blessings that have come from this pandemic for me and my family are. And one person speaks for a minute, the other person speaks for a minute, and then we'll come back to the full group. Are there any questions about that? Okay, so, okay, let's head off into our sentences. Wonderful, welcome back. Wow, I found that really fun. I got to go participate, and I hope you all found that pretty fun too. We're going to take a moment just to share in the whole group of any highlights or how that was for you, and then also something interesting maybe that you learned about the person who was sharing with you. So anybody can go if you just want to unmute yourself and share.
Well, I was inspired by Jo talking about her daughter, like noticing the level of maturity in the last couple of months. And I feel like I didn't say this, but I feel like I've seen that too.
Mm.
And I don't know if it's because I have a closer view or anyway, it's just sort of wonderful to get to notice that progress in the moment.
Yeah.
Listening to Allison talking about her relationship with her son, it felt to me like the kind of relationship that I hope to have with my daughter when she's that age. That her son is twice my daughter's age, but it's what I'm working for. It sounded so lovely, the close relationship they have, and the way that they're communicating during this time.
Wonderful.
And it was beautiful to hear of the, I was with Monica And the sense of just the pandemic circumstance have brought you both close together, and more time that's, I think I heard, less structured in some ways. So there's that deepening of relationship and things about getting healthier because you're able to cook together and do things together. So that sense of deepening of a bond by just spending more time in intimacy is just beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. And similarly, Leslie was talking about how she and her son and family are just spending so much more time together and going for walks together and spending time out on their patio and with their pool and just, you know, kind of, it sounds just, and I think this is the case for many people who have younger children at home, that there's like a lot more connection time. And that is just so beautiful. I love to see that. When I was living in Portland at the beginning of the pandemic, I noticed all of a sudden all the neighbors were home and all of their kids were home and they were going for walks. And it was like, I'd lived there for 3 years and I had never seen these people before. And it was just like, wow, this feels really human, you know, really nice to just go for a walk with the family. And that's one of the things Leslie was sharing and appreciating about this time. So thank you all so much for sharing all of that. So as we know, and as we were talking about before, it's a mix of all these things, right? There's benefits, there's blessings, there's, you know, these surprising, lovely things that have happened. And then there's also challenge, and there's, you know, maybe immediate challenge in our lives, but also a sense of our connection to the global reality and worry and fear for the future, and or a sense of empathy or stress or collective kind of psychic energetic disturbance about the state of the world, which of course existed before the pandemic. I feel like that level of stress was there for all of us anyways. And I would say there's been an increase of that with the pandemic. And then also, of course, with the violence of the police officers in the United States, and then the uprising for justice around the world. Even if it's not impacting us on a personal level, I know we're all aware of what's going on and how that feels in us, and that pain and that stress. So I'm going to take a moment to just kind of address that aspect of our lives and that aspect of this work, as we turn towards the challenges, the fears, the anxieties and stresses, and especially for our work today, how they show up in the context of our parenting. I want you to just kind of like start to tune in to how that is for you. What's up, what's challenging, what are you worried about? And then also how you avoid these feelings in your daily life. Because I know throughout all of this, all of these stages of intensity, there's times when we feel it really hard, really intensely, and then there's also ways in which we divert ourselves or kind of put it over there or shove it down or have different ways of kind of tuning out or avoiding. So maybe just think to yourselves for a moment of how the pain for our world feels when we feel it. And then what do we do to avoid it? Then where does it go when we avoid it? What happens when we're pushing it away in our lives? Joanna Macy describes this colossal anguish that people feel at the devastation of our natural world as a great public secret. I think that's an important thing to note as we do this work, that we've been conditioned not to talk about or acknowledge these difficult feelings in our lives. It's part of our social conditioning and part of how we kind of manage each other and manage ourselves in a social situation. In her books and in this work, she really outlines the enormous consequences of avoiding these feelings and how important it is to allow ourselves to feel them fully. And we may not be able to do that in certain family conversations or in our work setting, or in, you know, sometimes we don't feel like we can do that around our children for various reasons. And so creating spaces like this is very important to be able to actually turn towards it and allow the feelings to be there and to do the work of letting the feelings move through us. So just consider for a moment that kind of importance of actively feeling for ourselves, for our own mental health and well-being. And then as parents, something that I find very important and that I work with my own children and have outlined deeply in my book is how to then turn our attention to that skill for our children and how to teach them and help them understand how to feel the hard emotions, how to deal with the anxiety, the stress, the worry, the confusion, even the apathy that they're feeling, how to acknowledge it and work with it and allow those feelings to move through us. So basically teaching emotional maturity as our kids grow, as they grow through their childhood and into adulthood, so that they can stay present. And I guess the thing that I didn't say there about what Joanna teaches is that by doing this work, by actually feeling the feelings and moving through, we increase our capacity to respond to the situation in a conscious way. So one of the consequences of not doing it is that we get kind of deadened, kind of stuck, and we can't really actually and actively respond to what's going on. Once we feel it, once we're present to it, once we get that energy moving through us, we can say, oh, this is a situation that I need to attend to, and these feelings are actually feedback about this situation. And so I'm starting to learn now how I can relate to this and how I can maybe help, how I can maybe change the situation or show up with more presence and be able to be more responsive. So we all know what's happening here in our world is terribly overwhelming, and that we have a tendency to try to just stay positive and keep going forward. And especially with kids and especially with little ones, I know that there's an aspect to that's important, right? To have a sense of joyfulness and hopefulness and lightness in their lives. That's important. But even the littlest kids know what's going on. And so by committing ourselves to business as usual and powering through and staying positive and just trying to put on a happy face, we're not fooling anybody. We're definitely not fooling our kids. Our kids know exactly what is going on. If they don't understand it cognitively, they feel it emotionally. They really feel it. And I've witnessed this with countless families in my work, that the kids need to be addressed and they need to be welcomed into the scenario. They need to be met at their level, and their level is usually way higher than adults give them credit for. So I invite us to think about how to strengthen that emotional capacity within our kids as we develop it within ourselves, so that we're all coming together to meet the moment. And the very beginning of all of this work is giving our own selves permission to feel. So we're going to spend some time right now doing an adapted version of what's called the truth mandala. And so as I mentioned before, I was talking to Monica before the whole thing started, that what we're able to do here in 1 hour on a Zoom call is like the super tip of the iceberg for what the Work That Reconnects offers. And generally the Work That Reconnects is done in person over several days, maybe a 3-day or a 10-day intensive, where we can really, really go deep. But in the last couple of years, and especially in the last couple of months, I've been supporting Work That Reconnects experiences online, and I've recognized that the work actually is still quite powerful even here in this space. So I want to acknowledge that what we're going to do today is an adaptation of an original practice. It's not the whole thing, but it really can actually help move some energy. So in the Truth Mandala, we are allowing ourselves to express our different emotions, the anger, the grief, the fear, the emptiness or apathy, and just giving ourselves time to like tune in and then express them so that we can feel and we can hear from each other. Usually in a live in-person session, we're in a big circle and there's a whole physical component to it, and there's different tools that we use. We'll use a stick to signify our anger and really be able to hold that. So here we're all in our own spaces, but I invite you to just kind of like give yourself permission to feel it in your body. So the anger is a stick, and the grief is dried leaves, just that can go. The fear is a rock, a stone that symbolizes how our hearts get tight when we're feeling fear, that kind of cold tightness. And then the emptiness or the apathy is an empty bowl. And so that's just that space. And the way Joanna describes it is that for all of these emotions, there is a tantric flip side. There's kind of like the other side of the coin. So when we're feeling anger, we only feel anger because we have a sense of passion for justice. Like we're pissed off because something is wrong, something's not happening the right way, and so that is actually a beautiful aspect of ourselves. And we feel grief when we love. Like you don't grieve for something that you don't love. You have to love deeply to feel that grief. The fear, I'm trying to, I just went totally blank. What Frida or Allison might know the answer to what is the flip side of the fear.
Courage.
Courage, of course. Okay, feeling the fear and doing it anyways, right? That's what courage is. Courage is not being fearless. Courage is living with fear, is being able to move forward in, I'm scared and I'm gonna keep going. That's that beautiful aspect of our fear. And then the emptiness. Sometimes we don't feel. Sometimes we can't touch into where we're feeling, or sometimes that there's that sense of apathy or that overwhelm kind of, in that place of we don't know is a place where something new can emerge. So the unknowing, that empty space, is actually a beautiful container for the new to come in. And then sometimes people say, well, where's hope in all of this? And I love Joanna's answer to that. She's like, well, hope is the ground we're standing on. We're right here in hope. We wouldn't do this. We wouldn't get together and do this work if we didn't have a sense of hope. So don't worry about hope. Hope is under us. Hope is with us. Hope is imbuing this whole experience. So we're going to take some time, and because we're a small group, we're actually going to just stay together and do this work here together. And we're going to pause the recording during this time so that it's just us doing this, and it won't be shared. So we're going to take about 1 minute each-ish to express each emotion. And we can just go when we feel moved. And if we want silence or space, if we have something that we feel that we can't quite say, that's okay. We can say, okay, I'm ready to express anger. And then you don't have to say anything, or you could pass. I just invite you to be really compassionate with yourself and to be really tuned into yourself so that you're not feeling like the pressure to perform in this situation. This is about feeling the feelings. And as we hear other people express themselves, sometimes that stirs something in us. So maybe we don't feel ready to go right at the beginning, but just be with it, just be present, actively listen, be ready to engage when it arises in you. So, okay, so Frida, you can, how about actually, for the sake of this, Frida, will you put up the slide for the people who will do the recording just for a couple of seconds?
Yeah.
Then they can pause and do the practice themselves. And then we can pause our recording and move on with our part. Okay, so those of you who are watching the recording, this is a great time to pause the recording and just spend as much time as you need doing this practice with the people that you're with, or writing it out in your journal if you're alone. Okay, well, we just had a extremely powerful truth mandala, beautiful sharing, and I hope any of you who are doing this work via the recording or in your journals also got to experience this depth. An important thing to remember, and something that we did at the end of ours, is to move the energy physically, is to really like take some deep breaths and to shake it out, and then to, drink some water, wash your face, cleanse in whatever way that you need to. And an important part of the technology of this work is the purge of it, is the moving through of it, that happens sometimes when we cry, sometimes when we scream or stomp, or sometimes when we shake it out at the end. And I've spent most of my adult life here in the Rocky Mountains, in a very dark, high alpine mountain desert area, where the snow that gathers through the winter on the top of the peaks melts in the spring in such a force that it creates these like gushes of very narrow mountain creeks. We have like 6 or 7 creeks in our community here, and in between the creeks is totally dry. But at the creek, it's like rushes down. And I think of that when I think of this process, because over the winter, all sorts of trees fall and dead leaves and just all this debris. And when the water moves through in the spring, it just moves it out. It just clears it out. And that energy of a fresh, clean spring mountain creek is the energy that we can activate in our bodies, to make it possible for us to respond to the world that we live in. And so that is what we're doing physically when we do this work and when we really allow ourselves to feel. So now that we've done this, we can move into the part of the spiral that we called seeing with new eyes. Sometimes we call it seeing with new/ancient eyes because the newness that comes is not necessarily completely new, right? It could be actually just clearing the illusion away to something that's deeply ancient, to something that's deeply true and natural within us. So we're going to talk about this in the context of parenting. So now that we've cleared the way here, I invite us to start thinking about parenting maybe in a slightly new way, or just to bring our attention to it, to examine it. And I invite us to see ourselves as a link in our lineage. Every single one of us as a parent, even if we're an adopted parent or a foster parent, we are the in-between between what came before and what's going to come after. We're the ones who are holding that deep, long history of humanity on planet Earth and passing it to a child. So even if it's not your blood lineage, it's a lineage of human life on Earth. And we're passing that on to a child, and what we pass on to them creates what they will become as adults, as human beings on planet Earth. We actually are orienting them to life on Earth. We're orienting them to what it means to be human, orienting them to what their responsibilities are as a human being on Earth, what the possibilities are, what the relationships are. And so sometimes that can get lost. And, I know Allison had mentioned at some point, like the things that she hoped for and the things maybe she didn't know when her son was younger. I felt that so much too myself all along the way. And, in my 40s now with a teenager, I look back at all the things that I didn't know in my 20s when she was little, right? And so I know that for parenting, the experience of parenting is so immediate. It's so like daily, and we can get really like just in that moment. And there's so much that we can miss if we're doing that. And so I invite us through this process, now that we've kind of purged all of this emotion and we're in this more open place, to see the whole picture of it as, here we are orienting these human beings onto the planet at a very pivotal time. And so how do we meet this moment with integrity, with emotional maturity, with groundedness, with clarity? And ultimately, how do we partner with our children in order to together learn how to meet the moment? I think it's really important to remember that we're really just kids that were raised in this society as well, and that we were indoctrinated and conditioned into this society, and we might not have gotten all of the orientation that we needed. We might not have gotten, that present, grounded parenting that is really necessary for human beings to live well on the earth. And so to humble ourselves as parents and to say, okay, it's time for me to learn. I'm here, I'm ready to learn. And then to invite our children in to that learning process so that we can partner with them and we can empower them through that, to say, I really see you as a real whole human being who came here right now on purpose. And you and I got here together at the same time. We're here in this moment to do this work together. And it's big, it's huge, it's way bigger than any of us. It's way bigger than one lifetime. And so this parenting experience could really be a kind of cosmic partnership. Like, our two souls, our two beings, we're here right now. What does it need? What does this now need from us? So I invite you to, if we had more time, and maybe at other moments in time we'll have more time, other sessions. But in this moment now, we can't go as deep into it as I would really love to. But one of the things that Joanna Macy talks about and uses in the Work That Reconnects is the use of the moral imagination, the use of putting ourselves into the roles of other people or other non-human beings to expand our ability for compassion and to expand our awareness. She uses this in a couple of different really poignant practices in the Work That Reconnects. One is called the Council of All Beings, where each person pretends, kind of embodies an aspect of the world, usually a non-human aspect of the world, like the water or the trees or the hummingbirds. And it helps us to really see our whole living family of life in a deeper way, in a more compassionate way. And so, although we can't really do a full practice right now because of the sake of time, I just invite you to toy with that for a moment, of putting yourself in your child's shoes, putting yourself into that perspective of how are they experiencing this moment in time, this life that they've been given, this particular scenario. And here we are in the pandemic, and that's part of what we're really exploring right now. So the pandemic has hit you in a particular way as a parent. And you might be wrapped up in all of the ways in which you're reacting to and responding to and feeling that as an individual, as a parent. How has it affected them? You know, how has your child received the news? How has your child received the change in their reality and their experiences? And as you do this, you know, I invite you to be playful, like a child. It's part of what Joanna just gave this great webinar recently, that it's something that really struck me as this use of the moral imagination is innate. It's something that all the kids in the world have, of every culture in every way, is like, hey, let's play house, let's play hunting, let's play, you know, let's play it out. Let you be the this and I'll be the that. And so that's something that is still inside of us even as adults. And so I just invite you to take, I just kind of am like planting the seed of this idea for you to like start to play with that and to be playful with it as you explore how might this be for your child, and how might your awareness of their experience help you partner with them more compassionately. So I'm going to open us up for like just 3 to 5 minutes of chat around that conversation. So if anybody has something that was inspired, or kind of a curiosity or a question or something that came up from that concept, let's just open it up for a minute. Anybody can unmute and share if they'd like.
Well, an idea that just popped into my head would be to actually like play with Aaron and have him be me and me be him in whatever scenario, and just like see, you know, what did we each discover, and I bet it would be funny, and you know, just that, like, it seems so simple, but I don't think I've ever done that.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yes, definitely. Please do it.
Mhm.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I just love that, like, you know, okay, I'm gonna be this and you be that. Like, oh yeah, like we all know how to do that. And
Yeah.
why don't we do that more often as adults? Like, it's powerful.
Yeah,
Thanks, Sharon.
it is
As
powerful.
you're sharing, Leslie, I had the feeling that came with it, in the sense of the playfulness, and also the kind of I don't know, it's just like the empowerment. It's like all of that extra energy just open up, and just the deepening of the relationships. That's just beautiful.
Yeah.
And then I go on to think, as Joe was starting to talk, I actually, for some reason, my father, who's passed now, came to mind, and I didn't know where Joe was going, but I just started somewhere in there, kind of putting on my dad's shoes. And I think when I was a kid, that was, you know, things you do, you put on your mom's shoes or your dad's shoes or whatever. And I actually, for some reason, it was a memory that popped up, but I may play with that too, because my son and my dad had such a strong relationship,
Mm,
to play. So many things we can do with that.
brilliant. Yeah. Every single child that I've ever taken care of in their home puts on their parents' shoes. That's like one of the most universal things that all of these little ones do. All these toddlers, they go like to walk around in their parents' shoes. Yeah, but we could learn from them. We could try to get their little shoes on. Rita, do you have any ideas or thoughts that came from that?
I don't know. I just think that, like, particularly right now at this age, my son is 11, and we're very deeply connected. We always have been. Like, feels like we're soulmates. But he's reached this intellectual point that things have really shifted in the last couple of years, and we have so much fun. It's like when I allow myself to sink into this playful intellectual place with him, and then we kind of go back and forth. Like we've been making up rhymes, and that leads us to like trying to figure out meanings of words and stuff like that. And it's so much fun. It's just like we just sink into this playful place and like feed off of each other. And that's been happening during this period of time, which is so grateful for. But I could do more of it. Like I would really like to do more of that with him.
Yeah. Wonderful. And that's something that, you know, many parents do naturally, but many parents don't. Maybe they forget, or something about our idea of what parents are kind of skips over that. But it's so important to be with our children where they're at, and to really, and it's challenging. It's you have to keep on learning. You have to keep on engaging and being willing to get to know your child every day new, you know. And so like adults have this calcification, this kind of like sense of, oh yeah, I know this kid, or oh, I know what the deal is here. But something that being a parent can teach us that I find is just so hugely valuable is that every single day is a new day to learn. And you know, my daughter, I was very, very close with my daughter all through her life, and she has grown and evolved and changed in so many ways. And she you know, she will constantly be surprising me. And she's the one who taught me this, you know. She's the one who taught me, like, hey, you don't know me today. Right, I got something new for you today. So it can really keep us on our toes, and it really keeps us flexible, you know, cognitively, and to continue to see with new eyes if we really commit to partnering with our kids, which means that they are of equal worth, they are of equal contribution, we meet them, we see them right there, and we work with them every step along the way. So we could go way farther into that if we wanted to, but for the sake of time, we're gonna we're gonna move. And I was like, what word was I gonna do there? We're gonna move into the going forth, or I like to call it the growing forth, part of the spiral. And for this, I just am going to invite you. This is a very simple practice of setting one or two simple intentions for yourself, based on what has come from this session together, what we've talked about, what we've learned, what we've exposed emotionally, what we've explored. What would you like to bring from this session into your daily life as parents, into the daily life that you have with your child, the daily relationship that you have with your child? And so this is the time for your journal or something to write on. And I think I'm going to just give 2 minutes of just clear time for you to just really write to yourself whatever your intentions are for moving forward from here, any little nuggets or pieces of insight that you want to jot down so that you remember to bring forward. And then we'll come back after 2 minutes and share with each other anything that feels relevant. Okay, so now that we've had a moment to reflect and think about what kinds of inspirations or nuggets or ideas we might want to bring into our daily lives and our relationships with our kids, I want to just give us a chance to share. If there's anything that you feel like comfortable sharing with the group, please go ahead and unmute yourself and just share what you intend.
Two ideas that came to mind was to play out and embody, just in the privacy of my own space. My parents like to do each one of them from the eyes of a grandparent. So like play out in the moral imagination idea, play out my mom as the grandma of my son and my dad. So do that, something like that, see what comes up, just to feel it. And then I remembered, I've been writing and wanting to write to my son in more of that form instead of just the phone calls, to write letters. And I, when he was born, before he was born in my belly, and then all the way through, I think I stopped maybe when he was 16 and gave it to him when he was 18. Every year I would write a letter to him. And so I gave it to him when he was 18, and I'd like to ask him to send me a copy so I can look at him. Well, what the heck was I thinking? What was going on? So I'd like to do that and maybe write off of that.
Wow, awesome. Brilliant.
Yeah, I loved the idea of like, he's my partner through life. And like, okay, like, what do we do together? And who is he fresh? Like, and to approach that not in some kind of like transactional way. I will use this information to but just like, who is this?
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, for me, it's like just to remember that like our souls chose each other. You know, he chose me to be his parent of all the parents, and he chose me and his father. And in a way, I brought him to me, and that's so powerful. And I often forget that. And I think that my intention is just to kind of like trust that he's capable of more than I sometimes give him credit for. And also to just like more often intentionally meet him in that place of play, and to draw on that spark of creativity that drew us together to find ways to make that happen even in the midst of our daily chores and business. We can do that.
Yeah. Excellent.
Beautiful.
Excellent. Yeah. And for me, you know, my daughter has just gone through such a change in her life just a couple of days ago, beginning her adult life, like the official kind of get on a plane and go away from the parents. And so I'm just reminded as we do this work today, and as I, you know, talk about this kind of process of getting to know our children all the time, that it's so important for me right now to just actively listen and receive about her experience. And I feel like I've been doing that, especially the last couple of phone calls since she's been in Portland. But just realizing like over the course of this last 3 years, and especially this last year, there's been so much active parenting, so much like, you know, get your scholarship essays in and get your, you know, application to college and all, like, how are you doing on that? How are you doing on this? And just like really needing to kind of be guiding through the whole lead up to this decision, but now the decision has been made and she's got everything that she needs. And so I like, at this point in time, I really don't need to do any guiding. Like at this point in time, I can just like stop that and let go of all of that and relax that muscle and just, how was your day? You know, what are you finding out up there? How's it going up there? So that's a fun realization, just to like really check in on a very conscious level with myself of like, we've passed through that threshold. And that's pretty exciting. So I hope for each and every one of you that the intentions that you wrote down and any other intentions that have been stirring in your heart that haven't been voiced here come to manifest in your relationship with your children, and that something profound and beautiful has been planted in your heart and in your life by participating in this. I am in the process of developing a deeper experience for parents that would be able to use the work that reconnects on a deeper level. So to do the types of work that, the type of practices and work that we did today, but with a cohort of parents that could meet together over the course of, I'm thinking about 5 weeks, so that we can really dive in deeper, support each other deeper, get to know each other deeper. We're going to be sending a follow-up email for this webinar, and in that email there'll be a survey. So I would love your feedback on how this was for you today, on all the different levels. But there'll also be a question in there about whether you're interested in doing a deeper dive with a cohort of parents. So please keep an eye out for that, and let me know as I start to prepare that work. And to wrap us up today, I have a quote that I would like to share with you from L.R. Nost. And Frida's going to put it on the screen so that we can see it as I read it. And then we'll wrap up here with a nice blessing for each other. So L.R. Nost writes, "In a very real way, we are writing our own futures. The future of our world on the hearts and minds of our children. Let's think deeply, love selflessly, and act intentionally to write messages of peace and goodness and generosity of spirit on the hearts and minds of our children, our messengers, our hope for a better tomorrow." Maybe so. And now I invite each of you to say one word of blessing for the rest of the group. Just think of what you would like to gift to the other parents in the group as a blessing.
Curiosity.
Play.
Yes, play and courage. Thank you all so much for being here today. Frida, do you want to do a closing for our webinar program?
Yeah, I do. I'll just share this screen real quickly. Thank you so much for joining us today. To learn more about the Work That Reconnects Network's webinars and cafe series, please visit our website at workthatreconnects.org, and we really appreciate your presence today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to meet you, Leslie and Frida. And thank you so much, Joe.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. Love and blessings to all of you.
Thank you.